think we should go in now. We were a little late. We delayed the service just a little bit. Thank you very much. Thanks, Alison. Thank you. So I'd love to know, do you feel it's worth continuing doing this?
Oh, it's 5 minutes.
I like it.
And they're showing it at the beginning of the video.
Yes. All right then. We'll do it as long as the weather lets us.
When we send out a note, just say, more people.
I'll do that.
Sure, are you bringing it?
Hey Ross, hey Ross.
Are you going to sing next week? Maybe? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know if we'll be here or not.
Holy cow, that's really considerable. Is that gonna work? You're not doing
I'm going to ring the bell just to give us all a moment to gather in. As we move into this new way of doing things, there's a flurry of activity, particularly for those of us who are putting the service on. So, hello to those of you at home. Welcome to those of you who have joined us in person today. And I invite you to take a moment, just set aside all the compulsions of your daily life and feel yourself here at home. Today is our water communion. It's a celebration of community and a recognition of interbeing. It's a wisdom teacher. The ceremony brings the past into the future. It brings what we've experienced into our intention. And thus both the past and present or past and future occupy this present moment together. Today, we're going to make prophecy from experience. We're going to make prophecy from experience, and we're going to collapse time. Prophecies, by the way, are just the past knowing the future and exercising in the present. Active in the now. Prophecies are the past, knowing the future, exercising in the now. And today, by noting the character of the experience from which we got our water and offering it to the onflowing life of this congregation as a contribution, we will be swimming in the genre of prophecy, guided by the qualities exemplified in water. So we'll take these qualities of water as metaphors for our spiritual community, right? You can imagine for yourself right now some qualities and characteristics of water. And we could take those as metaphors for our spiritual community, our congregational life, our church. And one of the lesser remembered qualities of water that I want to bring to our attention, remind us of, is that water rests. We often think of water as a rushing or a current or a wave, but in fact, one of the most important things that water does is rest. It pools. And when it pools, it also percolates and seeps. This is a very important characteristic of water because by those qualities, it finds itself in a reciprocal relationship with the rocky earth. For it is by that infiltration process that water is refined and cleansed and returned to the soil where it can nourish the ground. And this is no less dramatic for how slow it occurs. Now, for those of you who have been a member of this congregation for a minute, know that this is true of our church home as well. We, when we can rest and be held and calm down, have the opportunity to percolate through our community or have our community percolate through us, and thereby and eventually become refined and become a source of nourishment for others. So that really gets to the heart of the question that I've asked our service associate this morning, Cynthia Becker. Earlier this week, I asked her to ponder a question, and I would ask that she share it with us this morning. I asked her where it is that she has experienced a perhaps slow, if formidable, nourishment and refinement by her engagement with this congregation and Unitarian Universalism. So the question is, Cynthia, where have you pooled? Where have you percolated?
I think Ann Seeped was in there too, yes. Good morning, Ron. And glad to see all the people here in person. We've done this a couple of times, and it's so nice to look at real people, and I'm so glad you're here. Just everybody at home, there are real people here. So there are more souls at home that number more than the 20 here, so hello to you also watching online. So when I initially think of water, I think of water as, quote, stable, versatile molecule. Many organisms live in it, all require it, and most, including humans, are largely made of it. Sounds like interdependent web of all existence, doesn't it? So I talked about this principle a bit in the July 5th CUC service and felt it was very appropriate to expand a wee bit this morning. So when you ask, Ron, about nourishment especially, for me, this spring's digital services especially have connected me more closely with members of this congregation and the church staff than in all my 7 years at NSUC. So while being a member of the Communications Committee team, or COMCOM, as we are affectionately called, I would be editing all the videos, images, music sent in for each week's service. Listening to all the types of voices in my headphones over and over, mind you. Through that intense experience, while most everyone, like Ross, most everyone was quarantined in their homes in small numbers, I was visiting with all of you to the point where I now recognize whose home we're watching on Zoom without seeing that person's face on camera and whose wonderful voice it is before ever seeing their face. I realize how much work people put into the submitted videos, and we all were eternally grateful. I felt so lucky to be the one to spend that intimate time with you all for a whole week. Connected doesn't seem like a strong enough word here. Perhaps tethered? Yes, tethered tightly to this talented and loving NSUC community. I was also privileged to belong to my quickly formed and tightly knit COMCOM family, meeting every Monday where we would try and take into account how our church would like to be brought together, if only virtually. I had the honor of working for almost 5 months with all this talent on this tiny, mighty team to see what we could accomplish. Another huge thanks to Ross, Ron, Allison, Janie, and Malcolm for being my second family and for supporting my advanced editing learning curve. In remembering all of those crazy and sometimes stressful but always fun times where we somehow cobbled together a cohesive service, I'd like to share something that my good friend Sam Darling, whom I was extremely fortunate to have met in this church, she sent me a wonderful satire of digital services that is set to the music of All Creatures of the Earth and Sky by some delightful Episcopalians, no less. Alas, I cannot sing it, but Catherine can play quickly with me while I recite these very familiar words. You ready? Go. So quickly has this week flown by. Set up the tripod, it is time. I don't think that's the music we're going to be singing. I think it's definitely all creatures. I'm not going to sing it for you today. So. No, okay. And this is what happens with a live service. And if you can't find it, I will just walk it through. There we go. And we're going to try it again. But I know that one too. So let's go. So quickly has this week flown by. Set up the tripod. It is time for your weekly Sunday live stream. Hook up your iPhone or your iPad. Untangle every wire you have. Find that one thing that you're missing. That one item you rely on, that you rely on. 3 minutes now until we start. This time, the Wi-Fi stops. Who's the first-hand saint of broadband? Up until this point, it all worked fine. This makes me lose my freaking mind. Wait, it works. No, disconnected. This all makes me apoplectic. Apoplectic. Now that live stream mass is done, sit back, relax, enjoy the sun. All is posted, stream's been hosted. Think of the service that you provide. You bring mass to those stuck inside. Though the task is not your go-to, we give thanks for all you go through and all you do. And you can hear me singing in your heads. But now I would like to dedicate the lighting of our flaming chalice to all the people who kept the services and the activities going through all of the spring and the summer. I know a lot of you were doing all of the Zoom services that went through, despite not being able to congregate all in one place. Right, that's big. We kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering. May the light of understanding illuminate our darkness. May the warmth of sharing bring us peace. We are the North Shore Unitarian Church, and our mission is to empower people to live with greater depth, meaning, and purpose. In this community, we celebrate people from all walks of life. No matter how you make your living or how you experience the sacred, no matter who you are or who you love, we hope you will feel welcome. It's good to be together.
We're going to sing I've Got Peace Like a River. It's number 100 in your hymn books. Actually, no, we're not going to sing I've Got Peace Like a River. You can either hum it or simply contemplate it. And I'm thinking about a little bit about Divina Lectio, where as we play this, as you glance at the words, you notice which words are sticking out for you more. And you allow those words to sink into your being and become a reflection. If you're at home, feel absolutely free to sing it.
So my favorite thing about today is that I can breathe. And actually, I guess it started yesterday, but I don't know that I had real confidence in it until this morning. I woke up and actually saw a little blue sky when the sun was coming up, and it just feels so good to breathe. Last week, of course, we were just oppressed by all that smoke from California and Oregon and Washington, and that was a very strange sensation of interconnectedness, as our seventh principle attests to. And not only were we physically connected with those folks down there, but I don't know if you felt it like I did, but I felt a sort of spiritual, psychic connection with all of that material conveyed up to us, all the grief and loss that they suffered. And it reminded me of when I was in my last day of my internship in Ogden, Utah. My parents were in Arizona, and my kids were infants, and Katie and I were moving the next day. Our stuff was thrown into a moving cube, and it was the last Sunday, and it was supposed to be this grand celebration, sort of thank you and farewell. But in Arizona, around my home, there was a massive forest fire raging. My family's home, actually, it was at 8,000 feet in the midst of the largest ponderosa pine forest in the world. And it was all on fire. And we had a little computer program that we could look at to tell the temperature of on the ground. The satellite would somehow figure out how hot it was on the ground. And right before I went into the sanctuary that morning, the temperature was 500 degrees. And so I thought that our home was gone. And turns out that it wasn't. The fire stopped a quarter mile away from our home. And a little bit, we lived on a dirt lane, and you go out the dirt lane, travel on the little freeway for, whatever, country road for a little while, and go to this village called Greer. Greer has 350 people in it, not even a stop sign. And the fire was bearing down on Greer to the point where the firefighters gave up. They said, we cannot stop this. Sorry, it's a wonderful vacation destination in Arizona, and we can't save it. And they left. And the fire crept down the mountainside and then stopped. It just stopped. And you know why it stopped? Nobody else does either. They could not find a reason for it to stop. There was no wind, there was no rain, there was no fire break. It just stopped. So a little bit of a miracle. We were then, of course, refugees in a way, because my family had packed all the things that they thought were valuable that they could fit into a couple of cars and evacuated well before that day. They were gone for a few weeks. And that was where we were headed right after Ogden. So now we couldn't go home, right? So we were refugees. But it turns out that, my mom had a friend who worked at the El Conquistador Golf Resort. So we got to be refugees at a 5-star resort and golf club, right? And so that was kind of this interesting juxtaposition of things. We were homeless and refugees, but in a very sort of posh and comfortable place. I'm aware of the privilege that comes with that, and that it came with who we knew, right? Not everybody in California or other places in this planet that are affected by climate change has those resources, has the privilege that we had. And so while I am absolutely grateful for where we were able to land for a couple of weeks, I'm also mindful of all the people who are currently displaced. We might even know some or know somebody who does, right? And not all of them are going to be as lucky to have a happy landing spot, right? And this is a story that is not going to be strange in our future. One of the reasons why, of course, there was the fires was because, as I alluded to last week, the water cycle is disrupted. Normally, at least the way that I was taught in not high school, but in grade school, you've got the water cycle where the rain falls, it goes into the streams, runs into the ocean evaporates, and it goes in clouds, and that's the cycle. But that leaves out a very, very important, it leaves out a few elements of the actual water cycle. And importantly, maybe most importantly, is the soil. The soil, the earth, the skin of this planet acts as a sponge so that when it rains, it soaks up the water like a sponge. And then some of that water goes to feed plants. But much of that water percolates through the earth, becomes refined and cleaned, and gets into the aquifers. And then the aquifers fill up, and they rise up, and they push that water out in springs that create little creeks and rivulets that go into the rivers, right? And those springs are places where cultures throughout the globe are aware that at a spring, it's a spiritual place. A spring is an opening into the earth. It's an opening into the underworld. It's where there are spirits and ghosts and lessons, right? So if you combine those two ideas, that ecological rain cycle with this spiritual idea, where the resource falls on the land and percolates down into the underworld, where it is refined and restored, rises up and is then pushed through out into our world. It's just a nice coupling of a spiritual and biological process. So when water is falling on depleted soil, it just runs off, right? It compacts the soil and then it runs off, creating a drought and flood system because nothing is getting into the aquifers, so the land dies. If you take away the grasslands and the forest, the soil dies. And then the water system gets disrupted. And California just recently had a 10-year drought, right? So, to correct that is a project of this century, right? And there are people who are getting started on correcting the disruption of the rain cycle, of the water cycle, and they're conceiving of themselves as earth regenerators. And what they are doing is watching when the rain falls, watching where it flows, learning from the land, the specific geography of a specific place, right? Learning from the geography, seeing where the water flows, and saying, okay, here is a place where we could create a swale or a berm or dig a depression so that the water will rest here. The water will stop and pool, giving the water a chance to seep back into the earth, replenish the aquifers. The aquifers then rise the water up through that sponge and through the springs. And now we have spiritual regeneration as well as eco-range regeneration. So now you could think of all of that, which is happening. You could think of that as a metaphor for our congregational life. Where do we create the swales and berms that will enable us to pool, to settle down, to percolate, become refined, regenerate, and give birth to the Spirit? Where do we do that? And we've got some ideas, right? Like these small groups that we're going to be unveiling in October, that we're asking everyone to sign up for. Those are little pools Those are little pools to find some stillness, refinement, resource. So you could think of other places in this congregation where you have had that opportunity to become still and to be refined and to be a resource. Incidentally, when I think of those pools, when I think of a pool, I think of a calm place, right? Like, it's a calm place. It's resilient. If you throw a stone into it, it will ripple, but eventually it will settle too. So in that sense, those pools, for me, represent non-reactivity. Very much like how small groups in our church may cultivate non-reactivity in us. And if we're doing church right, by the way, we are eventually, not right away, it's not a light switch, but eventually we are cultivating within ourselves a non-reactive presence, which is a peaceful place to be, a calm place to be, and a regenerative place to be. It's hard to be spiritually alive when you're in a constant state of reactivity. And almost everything else in our culture encourages us to be in a constant state of reactivity and tries to hammer our reactive nerves at every turn. This is a place where we move in the other direction, where we try to cultivate non-reactivity and spiritual regeneration. So in just a moment, we're going to listen to Catherine play a tune. And as you listen to her play, I want you to think of the ways, I want you to let that metaphor of this pool and the seeping and the refilling and the reemergence, I want you to think about that, how it might sit in your life, how it might rest in your life, but on multiple levels. I want you to think about how it's doing that personally. I want you to think about how it's doing that congregationally, culturally, civically, and civilizationally. Where are those connections that we can make up and down that scale as we seek here to create pools that will eventually result in our refinement and the regeneration of ourselves and the world? So we're about to do our water communion. The way that'll work is you'll come up and one by one and come over to this bowl and pour a little bit of water. Don't pour too much water because it'll overflow eventually. It's a small bowl. So a sample of your water into the water bowl. And if you would share with us a word or two about the character of the experience around getting the water that you are bringing into this congregation, right? So it might be love or regeneration or care and concern, whatever this quality is, and if it could be attached to how you got the water, all the better. It doesn't have to. No one's keeping close track, right? So you pour it in, and then you walk off in this direction and back to your chair. And don't walk in front of the microphone here because the people at home want to see you. The camera, thank you. The camera is this stick here looking thing. So walk this way and then back around. And before we get into that, we did have some people this week come in and record their water communion because they knew that they couldn't want to be here today, or they didn't feel comfortable yet being in a public space. So they came and did their water communion on video. And it's important to note that water percolating through the earth refines the water. It doesn't perfect the water. Totally pure water is one of the most poisonous things on the planet. You cannot drink pure water. And for that very reason, the video that we'll show you is not perfect. It has, and for those of you at home, I don't know what the sound is going to be like here. I know the sound might be a little bit fuzzy at times, but you'll be able to hear some people say where their water came from. More importantly, you'll see them. You'll see and hear the quality in their voice if you can't specifically hear the words, and just know the spirit that they are bringing into this congregation, right? So we'll play that first, and then I'll invite you all to do it live. And the folks at home should be able to see the video. This is kind of an experiment. So let us know how that goes later. If you say it right now on the sidebar, I won't be able to see that. So you'll have to send me an email later. But for now, sit back and watch the folks who came in earlier this week. And by the way, I should also tell you that when we upload this onto YouTube, where it will live permanently, we will include the video that we took of the first service, which had the kiddos. We were not able to get that rendered in time, but we'll include that on the YouTube that we put up. So if you want to see the kids do the water communion, you could rewatch this service later in the week, okay?
This water is for healing the inlet.
From the waters of the mud flats, this represents the renewal of life in the inlet.
This water is for nurturing.
This water is life-giving.
Hello. The character of my water, it represents universality. It's needed everywhere for all living things.
This water represents the spirit of service.
I live on the banks of the Capilano River, and this water is from the Capilano River. It's very clear. The river's constantly changing, and so this water is for the acceptance of change, courage in the acceptance of change.
For me, this water represents the life of compassion.
My water represents gratitude for the safety of myself and those I know in my community, and grief for those who are hurting and the damage to the planet.
Water represents to me the essence of life, and my concern for the lack of it in the world.
This water represents my intention to stay fluent, to go with the flow.
This water to me represents life, love, and compassion for all.
Water represents really the joy of life, because without water, I wouldn't be here. But I also like to honor the seawater, because I just love to swim in the sea.
So hopefully that spirit came through. This water is from our last water communion. Remarkable for its clarity after a year. Like this water, we will boil it. So I don't know what metaphor you want to get out of that, but we're going to boil the hell out of this water after it's all collected, and it'll be nice and refined, right? So that's what church is for too, I suppose. I'm going to add a little bit of last year's water communion water to this year. And over time, this will be repeated so that you could feel that continuity during water communion, that the water that we add here will contain all the water communions of the past, right? So I add a little bit of water from last year to this water. And I would invite you up. If you have water, you can come on. Okay.
I'm grateful for the water, for my health and my life.
This water is from our home.
And we are grateful.
This is a very small amount of water from my garden, rainwater, in appreciation of it clearing the air so that we can breathe.
This water represents for the parts of the earth that need water. They're suffering. This water represents to give them water.
This water represents water for all of life.
My water that I have here represents my new habit of drinking at least this much a day to keep me well after I've become a little bit more inhabilitated in the gastro area. It also represents the play that I have with the children in my life that I've had this summer, making big bubbles, making a place for them to have a little pool on my tiny little balcony in our new condo. And I'm so happy that I can play with water as well as it sustains our health, my health, and keeps us all well fed by being able to be used for our cooking, and so on. Thank you. And I'm going to go out this way.
This water reminds me of Hoy Creek, which is about a 5-minute walk from our condo. And the 2.5 years that we've lived there, and I've crossed that creek every day, no matter how dry it gets or how long between rainstorms it is, the creek never seems to fall below a certain level. So for me, that water reminds me of persistence and continuity.
My water represents the bubbly nature of water because I am enthusiastic most of the time and very pleased to be reunited with my church this fall.
This water is the life force from the North Shore Mountains.
Via our tap at home, just representing how good a system that we have here. And I'll also note that astronomers have found oceans of water on the moons of Saturn, possibly Jupiter, and astronomers are looking for water all over the place now.
This water represents the continuity of life.
Well, thank you for contributing your water to our church community. I heard health and play, ecological regeneration, care for home, gratitude, and resiliency. All of that and more, as we heard earlier in the video, and you'll see later in the video with the kids, all of that and more makes our congregation a healthy, vibrant, bubbly place, right? So water flows. Water turns obstacles into features. Water nourishes and cleanses and protects. Water is mother. It's the world in which we first come into life, is in a water habitat. Water easily transforms its state from solid to liquid to vapor, from one service to two, from in-person to digital broadcast. These are all metaphors for our community, right? Water is at home in the deepest reaches of space. There are not only oceans of water on other planets, there are oceans of water in space. Just water, not even collected on a planet. The amount of water would boggle your mind in space. It's also home. Water is not only in space, but in our airy atmosphere. Not only in our atmosphere, but in the ground beneath our feet. It has the ability to find home in so many, almost any environment. Water is resilient and always enters into a reciprocal relationship with where it is. It shapes our world, shapes our bodies. We are of water, right? It's the condition for life on this planet. We are blessed by water and taught by water. So may it guide our spirits. May it guide our community, our culture, our country, our civilization. invite you to join me in a spirit of prayer. As we thank you, Son, for your energy, for your light, for your invigoration. We thank you, Earth, for holding us and for holding water. We thank you, air, for connecting us and showing us how the Spirit moves. And we thank you, water, for life. We want to remember the essence of the hymn that we just heard, Amazing Grace, its relationship to water. There's no way that we can earn water. We did not earn our being. How is grace given? A gift. So we pray that we are responsible stewards of that gift. We pray for those who are displaced right now because of the fires to the south. We pray for all those who are helping. We give thanks for clean breaths and for the rain that washes the smoke from the sky. And we give thanks for this community, for the deep pools of wisdom, interaction, and care that refine us, renew us, so that we may offer our spirit to the world. Amen.
We just have a few announcements this morning. I know that this morning's basket is going to the St. James Music Academy for the entire month of September, which is couple more weeks coming up. And St. James' mission is to inspire Vancouver's inner city youth and bring social transformation through the power and joy of music. So there are baskets at the exit for the people that are here, and for the people at home, definitely look at e-transfers, and you can look at that in the e-bulletin, give you some instructions. There's going to be small groups. I know Ron was talking about this. This is coming up in October, so please look for information in your e-bulletin and sign up so you can maybe meet a few people at a time, get a little bit of connection. And of course, read your e-bulletin. There's so much information in there. There's also information on the website. We just want to keep people connected, and the only way we can do that is for you to read your emails. So we'd like to extinguish our flame. Okay. We want to thank you for participating today and for your attention. We hope that you found today's service meaningful and will join us again. So please join with me as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but carry with us the light of vision and the warmth of hope. The world calls to us to live with depth, meaning, and purpose. We go forth with courage and love.
You could actually rise as we'll sing Circle Round or we'll hum Circle Round for Freedom. And if you want, you could stretch out your arms as though we could touch.
So I've created choreography for this.
Oh.
And I'm going to teach it to you right now. It goes like this. I have to stand back, I'm afraid, from the microphone. That must create problems for people at home. So you can copy me as we do this. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us imprisoned, circle for release. Help.
Circle for the planet.
Thank you. Circle for the planet. Circle for each soul. For the children of our children, make the circle whole. So as we play that, I won't sing it, I'll say it. And we can actually all say it if we want as we do this gesture. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us imprisoned. Circle for release. Circle for our planet. Circle for each soul. For the children of our children. Make the circle whole.
That was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so as we leave this sacred place and time that we have created together, even those of you at home helped us create it here, let's be mindful of our entire community, the way our waters flow into and out of each other's influence. Let us cultivate those swales and pools where we can rest and percolate, find refinement through each other, through this congregation, through our values and principles, and then experience a regeneration so that we reemerge refreshed and ready to open our spirit to this world that needs it so badly. Let us go in peace. Thank you for practicing together.
Thank you. Cynthia,